to serious news. We do have a lot of news out of Washington that could move the markets this week. Everything from the president's pick for the Supreme Court to a possible coronavirus relief bill from the Democrats. So to talk about all of this, let's welcome Senator Ted Cruz of Texas. He has a new book coming out, and it's very timely. It's called One Vote Away: How a Single Supreme Court Seat Can Change History. Senator Cruz, thank you for joining us today. I mean, wow, talk about the timing on this. This is all that is on anybody's mind right now. And perhaps more than anything else coming down to what happens to Obamacare. This was a discussion that we were just having a little bit ago, for the one vote having a huge impact over the course of history. How much is riding on this right now?
Well, good morning, Becky. Thank you for having me on again. You're right. This vote is enormously consequential. The book, One Vote Away, I wrote this spring and summer during the COVID lockdown and really focused on, before I was in the Senate, I was a Supreme Court litigator. My job was representing the state of Texas and representing private companies in bet the company litigation before the Supreme Court. And what the book does is each chapter focuses on a different fundamental constitutional liberty. So there's a chapter on free speech. There's a chapter on religious liberty. There's a chapter on the Second Amendment. There's a chapter on U.S. sovereignty. There's a chapter on elections and democracy and Bush versus Gore. I was part of the legal team litigating that, which we may see reprise with this election if we have litigation challenging this election. And in each of the chapters, what I do is I tell war stories. I tell really the inside story of what's happening on the court, who the players are, what the issues are. And it's designed to be readable, to be understandable, where you don't have to be a lawyer to really get why the issues at the court matter, and on how virtually every one of them, they're one vote away. They're 5-4 decisions where one additional justice on one side or the other can flip the balance of the court. So this vacancy right now is incredibly consequential, and President Trump's nomination of Judge Barrett is going to prove one of the most important things he has done in his entire tenure as president.
Senator, let me ask you, as a student of the court, this is a conversation we just had with an analyst, a healthcare analyst, but what happens with Obamacare? She seems to think that Kavanaugh, Justice Kavanaugh, might very well side with Roberts and go ahead and protect it. The Obamacare might protect it from the court. I just wonder what you think on this issue. Kavanaugh has proven to be a jurist who very much looks at the law, maybe not coming in with a policy axe to grind, but so far he seems to be looking at things from what the law may dictate.
Well, and that's what any justice is supposed to do. We're not supposed to have justices who are pushing their own policy agenda. Instead, a justice should follow the law. So I don't know how the court will resolve this particular Obamacare case. The first Obamacare case that came before the court, Chief Justice Roberts wrote an opinion that was it was a terrible opinion. He essentially rewrote the statute and turned what had been a penalty under the statute into a tax. And he did it for policy reasons. He did it to save the law because he wanted to keep the court out of politics. Ironically, it ended up proving one of the most political decisions he's ever done. I've known John Roberts 25 years. He was a former clerk to Chief Justice Rehnquist, as was I. In the book, One Vote Away, I talk about that Obamacare decision. You know, this latest iteration of the Obamacare decision is based on Congress stepped in and eliminated the individual mandate. I led the fight in the Senate to do that, and we got it done. And the question is, what are the repercussions for the rest of the statute? You know what I think is really interesting about this, Becky? So if you listen to Senate Democrats and what they have to say about Judge Barrett, it's clear all the Senate Democrats have the same talking point, which is Obamacare, Obamacare, Obamacare. That's what they want to talk about. I find that incredibly revealing. Number one, every Republican agrees we're going to protect pre-existing conditions. And so what they're talking about is what they think politically resonates. But 100 out of 100 senators agree we're going to protect pre-existing conditions, regardless of what happens with Obamacare. If Obamacare were repealed, which we've tried to do in the Senate, premiums would go down and health care would be more affordable. But what it really reveals to me, Becky, is that the Democrats don't want to talk about the radical left-wing positions of their justices restricting free speech, taking away your rights for free speech. They don't want to talk about their radical positions trying to limit religious liberty, trying to allow people to take away your right to live according to your faith and according to your conscience. They don't want to talk about their effort to gut the Second Amendment and essentially write it out of the Bill of Rights. And the fact that every Democrat has Obamacare as their only talking point on this, I think reveals that they recognize the American people want to see the Bill of Rights have real teeth and our rights be protected.
Senator Cruz, let me ask you just about something that the business community certainly has focused on. I understand why Republicans would go ahead and push for this nomination, push it through. You can, and you obviously want to do what you can when you're in power. The Democrats have threatened to come back with some pretty nuclear option type things, changing the number of justices on the court, getting rid of the filibuster. And I do have to say, there seems to be such a lack of gentility with the Senate as we used to know it. There seems to be such a lack of an ability to work across the aisle. I do think businesses are very concerned about what happens with these huge swings to one side or the other every 2 years, every 4 years, every 6 years, every 8 years, depending on how an election goes, when all the rules change and everything gets rewritten. Is there anything that makes you think that we are not in for even more violent swings, depending on which side wins?
Look, I think that's entirely possible. If the Democrats win in November, if Joe Biden wins and the Democrats take the majority in the Senate, they will end the filibuster. They were going to do that long before this Supreme Court vacancy, and they'll do that because they want to ram through some policies that from the business community would be enormously damaging. They want to not only repeal the tax cut from 3 years ago that helped produce an incredible economic boom, but they want to raise taxes on taxpayers across the country and do it while we're coming out of essentially a depression. They're looking to impose massive new regulations. The Green New Deal is estimated to cost $93 trillion, which, to put it in context, is more money than the federal government has spent in the entire history of the United States of America, going back to George Washington. Energy, oil and gas. The proposals they're putting forth are to eliminate fracking domestically, to destroy the U.S. Oil and gas industry and energy production. All of those would be incredibly consequential. And I do think there's a real risk that they would pack the court. They're threatening to do that. They were threatening to do that before the Ginsburg vacancy. And if they pack the court, from a business perspective, as you noted, business wants certainty. I represented a lot of private clients in front of the Supreme Court. If you can look at the law and say, okay, the court is going to follow the law, your clients can understand how to behave if they know what the law is. If the Democrats pack the court with judges that are just going to do whatever they happen to think is fair and good policy, that becomes very hard to predict. I'll tell you, when I represented clients in the Ninth Circuit, which is the most liberal federal court of appeals in the country, it was very frustrating to clients because when you're in the Ninth Circuit, you didn't know what the hell they were going to do. I mean, it depended on what judges you got, and it was all over the map. In my experience, the business community much prefers judges and justices who will follow the law so you have predictability.
Yeah, I think both sides are guilty of kind of pushing things too far. But let me ask you about TikTok. We've had some conversations about this morning. And again, this is a judge in Washington, D.C., who went ahead and issued an injunction saying that the administration cannot ban TikTok at this point. Is it a national security risk? And if so, what do you think happens next?
Well, I think TikTok is unquestionably a national security risk. TikTok is controlled by the Chinese government. It is one of the many tools they use for espionage. The spyware that is in TikTok is really troubling in terms of the ability of them to monitor, if you have on your phone, to monitor your contacts, to monitor your emails, to monitor your texts, to monitor your phone calls. And it's deep espionage that a lot of folks, and especially kids, especially preteens and teenagers, are willingly letting the Chinese Communist government onto their devices and have that kind of surveillance. As regards this particular court decision, I haven't read the decision of the district judge, so I'm not sure
I don't think
what the legal reasoning is. But I think as a policy matter, it is a serious national security threat, and the president is right to be leaning in to protect the national security interest.
Let me ask you about stimulus. I know that you have some very set ideas. We've discussed this with you in the past about what you think it would need to rise to in order for you to vote for a stimulus package at this point. The Democrats are going to come up with a new package, and I'm sure you will disagree with a lot of the things that they pack into that. I'm sure it's not going to fit your bill exactly. But we also have Treasury Secretary Mnuchin, who's going to be speaking with us at Delivering Alpha on Wednesday. I know he would like to see an aid package passed as well. Do you think he has a bigger issue trying to convince the Democrats to come around on this, or to convince you and some of the other Senate Republicans?
So I don't think the Democrats are moving. In my opinion, Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have made a political determination that it is in their best interest to maximize economic pain, to have as many people unemployed and hurting as possible. And I think the reason is they believe that if millions of people are sitting at home and they're broke and unemployed and pissed off, that benefits Joe Biden. And so I don't think, I mean, we've gone several months where Pelosi and Schumer have had zero interest in negotiating anything. They're not even willing to come to the table. And I think they've decided nothing will pass until Election Day. One thing that hits very close to home in my home state of Texas is aviation and airlines. We've got airlines looking at tens of thousands of furloughs coming online October 1st. A whole lot of experienced professionals losing their jobs. That doesn't need to happen. I've spoken with the CEOs of most of the airlines, but I've told all of them, listen, Pelosi and Schumer want this to happen because furloughs a month before Election Day they think will result in people being angry at the president and voting against the president. So I think Pelosi will make some noise, but I don't believe any deal will be cut. And to be clear, Becky, I think we should be passing something right now. We should be focused on economic recovery, on getting businesses open again. I introduced legislation, the Recovery Act, cutting taxes, cutting regulations, creating liability protection. For the millions of small businesses right now opening their doors, we want them to thrive and prosper and succeed. That's what we ought to be focusing on instead of cynically leaving people who are hurting economically to continue hurting.
Senator Cruz, I want to thank you for your time today. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.